On today's episode, we dissect the new gather round deal. The Bombers are on the up after a 4-1 start to the season, and we take an early look at the mid-season draft. All that and more on today's episode of Zero Hanger TV. All right, so straight into it. The gather round was a huge success in South Australia. So successful that they penned a new 3-year extension. Good call or bad call?
Can I say mixed call? I certainly thought that South Australia was deserving of it for next year. They were absolutely fantastic and ticked every box for 2023 for the first ever, and they did so with only a few months preparation. A 12-month head start is just going to show that it can be that much better next year. But for a 3-year deal, I was certainly a bit surprised.
Yeah, so then who's next in line essentially? So, you know, you've got Queensland, you've got Western Australia, and then potentially Tassie to join the competition?
Yeah, there's obviously a few states wanting gather round this year, and SA beat them to the punch. That was New South Wales and WA, one being a less of a footy market, but one that the AFL really want to grow in, and another being similar to SA in being a really strong football market in WA. So those two I thought certainly would have been given a chance for maybe 2025 and 2026, but now we'll have to wait until, at least 2027. And then, as you mentioned in saying that, by then we could have a Tasmanian team in the competition. If that was their first year, then it seems like it'd be pretty much spot on to have gather round in Tassie for Tassie's first year. But a lot to play out there, obviously. And then, as you mentioned, Queensland, the other one, more so bring Brisbane maybe and Gold Coast in southeast Queensland. Obviously, they've got Cairns up top as well. But the issue will be the redevelopments for the Gabba, which are going to take place in the next few years anyway, ahead of the 2032 Olympics. So Brizzy, probably not a hosting destination as like all overall Queensland. But certainly a few other states will be quick to jump on for 2027.
Absolutely. So now moving on, Essendon are on the up, as much as it pains me to say. They beat the D's in a pretty strong performance. They're 4-1, so best win so far of the season.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely fantastic victory for Brad Scott, just honing exactly what he's been wanting to push with this side. Fantastic through the midfield. I thought their contested game, getting the ball out and getting it through, as really, and against Melbourne as well, not easy to do. The defence has been sturdy most of the season. I think they don't have an overwhelmingly great back line, but they've got role players like Laverde and Ridley who really do stand tall when they need it. And then their attack, which has been a bit lacking as far as a star power point of view. Jake Stringer back in round 4 was fantastic, and then Sam Draper and Andrew Phillips sharing that ruck forward tandem in the absence of Peter Wright was absolutely fantastic. So they're flying at the moment, the Bombers.
Yeah, and Merritt and Parrish are in fine form, and there's a couple of players knocking down the door as well.
Yeah, those two have been standouts. Not that they haven't been for the last 2 years for the Bombers, but I think just seeing them both play the best footy that they have together is really giving them a huge edge in midfield. Dylan Shiel certainly flying under the radar this year, I think, and Nick Martin, fantastic outside in attack. So he's a 20-1 player each week for them at the moment. He's been absolutely fantastic. And as you mentioned, their depth, I think, is what is most impressive at the moment. Ben Hobbs not getting a game despite dominant VFL form. Nick Heim was the sub after a couple of weeks in the VFL. Massimo D'Ambrosio can't get a game at senior level. Patrick Voss is kicking as many goals as he can in the twos and can't get a look. So and Brad Scott said that fans will get a look at these players throughout the year, but at the moment they're just trying to gel with what they want to at the moment, and it's certainly working really well.
Yeah, very exciting times for Dons fans, and a big Anzac Day game coming up soon. So very exciting time. So now moving over to the rookie rankings, and again, Sheasel, Ashcroft right at the top, a little bit of movement underneath them.
Yeah, so 1 and 2 for Sheasel and Ashcroft, as it has been, I think, for the past 3 weeks. But Max Michelini, who came in last week at 6, is now shot up to 3rd. I think he's last fortnight in particular, he's consistent all season, but his last fortnight has really placed him in that podium. But he still probably is in the bottom 4 group. I think there's a bit of daylight between Ashcroft and Michelini at the moment. And then, like you said, heaps more movement in those last 3 spots. So Mateus Filippo has jumped up from, I think he was 5th, he's come into 4th, swapping with Oliver Hollands from 4th to 5th. Nothing on Hollands. I just think that Filippo's performance on the weekend was fantastic, and there's probably just a bit more from him at the moment. And then dropping the 3 spots from 3rd to 6th was Ruben Jinby, who again has had an absolutely fantastic season. I think he probably could be, it was really tight between those 4 spots, but a difficult last couple of weeks for him. Injury playing a factor in Sunday's performance against Geelong, but it was great to see him get his first goal in footy. And then from next week, we'll have a top 7. So it'll expand now that we have a bit better, bigger pool of draftees. We have a better idea of the class that we're looking at, and we'll have a top 7 from next week onwards.
Yeah, exciting stuff. And I'm going to predict that Sheasel and Ashcroft are still going to stay up there.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to take an early look at the mid-season draft. So Mitch, which clubs have spots open, I guess?
Yeah. So I think there's about half a dozen at the moment that didn't use spots at the SSP period or rookie draft period, and then on top of that, an extra that opened one up during the season. So that was Richmond with the retirement of Jason Castagna. Obviously, he departed in February, which came just weeks after the SSP period, and when they had a few players training, but unfortunately, that timing didn't give them more flexibility, and they'll carry his vacancy into the mid-season draft. Now, Geelong and the Western Bulldogs didn't really have players trained through the SSP, so they had a spot each from the rookie draft, and when they decided to pass on picks there. And then on top of that, I think there's Fremantle, Hawthorn, Essendon are the other 3 that had players train with them over the summer, decided against recruiting them, and then so that left them with a spot and for the mid-season draft. And then there could be a couple of clubs that join them, as is the case most years with a pretty late push. Now the draft, I think, has been flagged to take place late May, but we could see clubs like GWS, North Melbourne, some of those that have players on that are inactive and are going to be inactive for most of the season, open up spots in their place for the mid-season draft.
Awesome. So who's looking to get taken? I know there's a few players in some strong VFL form and waffle form.
Yeah, well, it's very hard to get a read on mid-season draft prospects. It seems right before the first pick that we'll kind of have an idea. But from this far out, as going off what the form we can look at, Sam Naismith, Port Melbourne, former Sydney player. I think we mentioned him about 3-4 weeks ago when Collingwood had that ruck crisis, that his form certainly would have him on the radar of AFL clubs. A couple other guys, former Hawthorn midfielder James Cousins has been fantastic for Williamstown. Werribee ace Sean Manor, who I think the other week had 40 and 4. So and he's continued that form throughout the start of the season. So he could be one if players want that kind of spark that can play half forward through the midfield, deep forward. So he's certainly one to look at from a VFL perspective. Waffle, bit of noise out west that Jack Buller, a tall forward at Claremont, could be considered for clubs looking for a bit more height in their attack. And then another one that I've kind of looked at as well in the sample is Tom Lewis at Sturt. I think he's been pretty fantastic in midfield, clearance, tackles, ball winning. He just has it all from an on-baller perspective. So there are a couple names that from form certainly work well. List managers might have another idea, but it'll all play out in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome, exciting stuff. All right, so moving over we're going to finish off with the MVP, like always. So we got a tie in 3rd place.
Yeah, it's getting quite tight at the top, I guess, across those podium spots. So what we have in 3rd is Clary and Jeremy Cameron, 2 fine form players of this competition, and just ahead of them at the moment is Marcus Bontempelli, who I thought was absolutely fantastic against Port Adelaide. Him and Tim English, who's another one in that top 10. Those 2 have just been absolutely dominant for the Bulldogs, but they still can't quite seem to get the team over the line. And obviously, I think that comes down to the squad as a whole. But up top again this week, reclaiming top spot, Nick Dacos with a near perfect performance against St Kilda on Sunday, career high 42 possessions. He was absolutely fantastic. So he goes to top. As mentioned, Bont in 2nd, Clary and Cameron equal 3rd. Jordan Dawson, who I think had a perfect game against the Blues on Thursday night and has done so for the last couple of weeks. He comes into that 5th spot. So yeah, they're pretty tight. Dacos with a 9-vote lead, but obviously a fair few rounds to play out.
Awesome, exciting stuff. Thanks, Mitch. And that wraps it up for today's episode of Zero Hanger TV. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can catch up on all the latest AFL news at zerohanger.com.au. Thanks.